Hey, Marge. Hey, Ginger. I think.
Hi.
Hey.
I did not dress up for you guys tonight. I dressed down. I'm in my shirt and sweats and my comfy socks.
You need the comfy socks.
You got to have the comfy socks.
Yeah. We're waiting for a couple more people and we will begin our fun-filled event. Speaking of comfy socks, I had to go up to Centralia, Washington, which is, for Ginger's perspective, about an hour and a half due north of here. It's roughly halfway between Seattle and Portland for a meeting this morning. And there was snow on the ground. And the highest it got, I was there about 4 or 5 hours, highest it got was 34 degrees. Oh, here's Mary joining us. Marge, you're on mute, Marge.
Yeah, it snowed here this afternoon.
Did it really?
Just for a few minutes,
Will it stick? Will it be on the ground overnight?
Nah, it was gone in a half an hour.
Oh.
Hi, Mary.
It was,
hey, Mary.
It was 70 in Phoenix.
Wow.
Yeah, right. A 70. Well,
I had lunch outside at Subway.
Yeah.
On Tuesday, I was on the legal subcommittee call and Holly Doyle was appearing from your corporate offices, and it was totally overcast here. And all I could see is this round orange orb in the sky through her window, and had to ask her what it was. And she indicated,
yeah, Holly's lucky enough to have one of the offices with windows. Mine is on an interior hallway, so it's as dark as a closet. Got to work your way up to the windowed offices.
Yeah, apparently.
Hi, Mary.
Hi.
I know Lisa said she wasn't feeling particularly well, so she may pop in or out.
Yeah, I'll give her maybe a minute or so to catch on, and then we can begin. I'll start getting my screen share up so we can do that.
Was this?
Go ahead, Mark.
Was this supposed to be a public meeting?
I didn't have on the what do you call it, the website, so it's noticed.
You're cutting in and out for me. I can't understand most of what you say.
Having the same problem, Marge. Yeah, same. Your connection is intermittent.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know what happened. Mary, can you?
Yeah, okay. I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. It looks like I'm having bandwidth problems for some reason. So I'll basically just do it without sharing the screen, because that's when it started to go wonky on me. But when I got back from this trip, I had a quick chance to send you some stuff. I don't have any expectation that you had time to read it, but basically we all know each other, so we can dispense with the introductions. Hopefully Louisa's feeling better, and if she can join us, great. And if she can't, I'll catch her up when she's healthy. There's going to be a county representative on the committee, someone from their external communications department. Probably killing her name, but it's something like Jonna V, and she was at the open house, but I'm not sure she was introduced herself to everyone. But I do think she spent time at your table during portions of the open house, and she hopefully will be here to join us. So really the scope here is in the email. It is to create a general landfill history, and I'll talk more about each of these. We already have some drafts that have been going back and forth. Develop protocols for timely and broad distribution of the CUP related information. And that's to the public, to other governmental entities, the neighborhood, interested committees, groups, and divisions. An outreach campaign, which may or may not include frequently asked questions or some specific protocol, and then writing or being my editor for writing the executive summary. So I'll be taking the laboring over, but those are the major topics. So let me just take them one at a time. The general landfill history. So the document that I attached, this, I think it's called Draft Report, Section 4A, Common Understandings. It was Daniel's first shot way back when we first started this process to put together a document that was a first draft at the history piece. And then Nancy Whitcomb provided some additions, edits, corrections to that document, although it's a separate document. It wasn't track change at the time, which wasn't an ask of her. That she did that, and then Joel did a similar thing. So we have these three documents that are the so-called history. The orientation of those documents we need to agree upon. So initially, where the common understandings documents were leading out was there. For instance, the capacity subcommittee. You know, when did cell 1 come into play, cell 2 come into play, 3, and so on, and all that stuff was going to be part of the history. But the way that capacity subcommittee has evolved is they are doing their own freestanding review of the capacity issues and the chronology over the years. So we don't have to repeat it in our more general history kind of document. And same with the CUP conditions. We don't need to do a chronological history of the history of the CUP conditions, because that subcommittee is doing a freestanding document that's in chronological order that will lay out all the land use actions and what have you. The legal committee is doing an overlay for, this was the first franchise agreement, this was the second franchise agreement, so on, and so on. So really what we are left with is creating for the general public and for people that are new to following this process, a history document that gives them a general orientation to the evolution of the landfill from, when it first started being used. And this is, of course, pre-Republic at that point, but and taking it through to the present, without all of the CUP this and CUP that kind of thing. And I think when you have time, when you look at Daniel, Nancy, Joel's documents, you will see that there is a good solid beginning of creating that document. I am suggesting, if you agree, that some of it will be taken out because it will be in the CUP, in the legal, in the SMMP, all that other work. So any general thoughts or ideas as to, what the purpose or goal of that general land use history piece should be, and who the audience is for that work, what have you?
First of all, Joel's, I did not get a copy of Joel's.
It was in the link at the bottom there where it says above, it says, here are some of the documents that currently exist, above 3 attachment, and then there's that link.
Okay.
Right above where it says next steps and see you soon.
Okay. I'll find it.
That's Joel's document. The one that I didn't have a hard copy of it.
But everything else that you mentioned, you attached.
Yeah.
Everything.
So I had hard copies of 3 of the 4 documents. The one I didn't have a hard copy as is Joel's. So I just put the link to the main project website.
The other thing is, the other 2 documents are in Word format, but Nancy's is only a PDF. And so like if we wanted to combine, it would be really good to have her information in a Word document as well.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be cute or funny here, but I'm not the best person to ask her for a Word version of that. Although we could probably.
You don't need to. I can convert it. I have software on my computer that can convert from one format to another.
Because it has so many footnotes and stuff. You could sure take a shot at it. There's no harm in that.
So why don't you do that, Ginger, and see if the formatting gets preserved? Because I agree with Marge. I've had to do some, and I have Acrobat Pro or something that supposedly does it, but sometimes it's just a formatting nightmare.
Okay, yeah, I'll check. I didn't realize there were a bunch of footnotes, so that you're right. That could complicate things, but I'll take a whack at it. I did have a couple of questions, just and you sort of vocalized both of them. Obviously, these other subcommittees are doing their own work. So how do you envision us trying to distill their detailed reports into a high level summary of what each of those are doing? Because like the history of Coffin Butte, like it could be 3 sentences or it could be 30 pages, right? Like, so I'm a little unclear on what elements we should be pulling from each of the other subcommittees' work, if that is in fact what we're supposed to be doing. And then also, I am personally a little unclear as to who the audience for this is. Is it the county? Is it the general public? Is it work group members? Is it all 3? Because those are actually 3 very, very different audiences, and trying to put something together that meets, is it the Board of Commissioners meets all of their needs could be challenging. So it's sort of like, do we pick a priority audience? Who do you think the audience is for this?
Well, that's why I'm asking you guys. I mean, I have some thoughts, but Mary, Marge, who is the audience? Mary?
I think that, I feel like the audience, a big part of the audience should be the public. So I think that if we kind of tailored the writing of it to be accessible to the public, then I think we can also make it, good for other groups as well, just to make it not make the language not too confusing and make it really easy for everyone in the public to be able to understand what's going on.
I think the Board of Commissioners would appreciate that as well. In county, I think there's no one who wouldn't appreciate a document. That was no, I'm not kidding. I wasn't being facetious. I agree with you completely, because so many times these documents are stilted and they're not in a format that invites someone to read it. And I think that's very important, that this document should be in a format that encourages people to read it.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of what we've produced as a work group and through the various subcommittees is overly verbose. It is, using 17 words in a sentence when 4 would suffice. And they're all, they're all word heavy. And maybe there's a way, I don't know, but maybe there's a way that as we're putting this together, we can take things that, instead of having, 6 pages of type and copy, we can use a timeline, or we can use something, visually graphic wise to tell the story that's not just, flipping through pages and pages of sentences, because I do think you tend to lose people that way. I'm not talking about making something cartoonish or overly simplistic where we leave out pertinent details, but I'm talking about being a bit more creative in how we put this together so that, as Mary said, it is useful and it is something, that, people want to read. I think we lost Marge. I think her connection went out.
Okay, well, hopefully she'll get back on here.
She was frozen cooking something on my screen for most of while I was talking, and then I know she disappeared.
Okay. My sense of it is that the primary audience is the public. The secondary audience is, for instance, say we get new SWAC members, we get new planning commission members that come on, that they have a place to go to just get the historical orientation. I mean, I'm just making this up, but I think when you look at what's in the drafts right now, they are a deep, deep dive. And I'm not poo-pooing any idea that you all come up with, but I mean, it really goes back to if you read you read Joel's version and somewhat Nancy's version, you will see things like on the front end, it talks about what tribes inhabited the area, as an example from Joel. On the more recent end, in Nancy's document, she talks about apparently some homicidal idiot killed some woman and dumped her body in a something container in Norfolk Corvallis, and it ended up in the landfill or something, and they found the body. And that just happened, I'm making this up, in the last like 4 months or 3 months or something. So
There's a news story. It was a domestic violence incident out of Portland.
Okay, so
and the
we
sheriff's
have
office up there contacted us and asked
we
us.
have this spectrum of details that we're going to, you're going to have to make a sort of an editorial judgment. I mean, my sense of it is, think about a totally objective news reporter who, kind of an investigative news reporter. He, she, or they do an article on the history of Coffin Butte. What would they find to be the most salient features that the public needs to know? And because the arguments back and forth, good policy, bad policy, legal, illegal, are really for the other subcommittees to hash out the details about. This is more, I'm hoping it's more apolitical and less positional and just more, here are the facts, here's how it evolved. And so what the tenor and tone of that is, it remains to be seen. And I guess I'm suggesting, if we need a volunteer, to someone to look at those 3 documents that we have, Daniel, Nancy, Joel, and mush them together into sort of one chronological order document, and then take a look at that draft and say, all right, too much detail, too little detail, and sort of agree on the scope of it. Reactions to that, Mary?
Yeah, I think that I like that. I feel like for the public, it might be more like pertinent information to focus more on the present of the landfill and more of like the near history, I guess. And definitely to touch on like the like, you know, like the really far back history, but to have more detailed information about like within the like last few decades or something like that. I don't know how long the landfill's been open, but something where it's a little bit more heavy on information that's like more relevant, I guess, to people right now. That might be more interesting for people.
And that could work. I mean, you could have less detail. I'm totally making this up for the first 40 years, and then get more detailed in the history going on. For instance, I've never seen in one place, because I asked for it when I started the assessment, like, you know, when was the last CUP, or the one before the last, the one you have now, when was that? How does that deal with the franchise agreements for the hauling franchise agreements, and the franchise agreement for the landfill? Not to get into details of what they say, but just a timeline that says here's how they work at a high level, and then get people into the details. So sort of an executive summary history, then the more detailed history. But the contents of what is in each franchise agreement, what's in each CUP, they're going to do all that work. And I think we can say, for more details as to the contents of the franchise agreements, see Benton County Talks Trash Final Report, section X, pages Y through Z, and just link it there, and we'll hyperlink it in the report so they can go there if they want more detail.
Mhm.
But I don't think we need to summarize for the history piece what the other groups are doing. So it's not fair to ask either of you if you want to volunteer when we have two other suspects who we could assign since they're not on the call. I mean, that's the old, you're not at the meeting, you get the.
Well, the only thing I was going to
Okay.
say as it relates to that, Sam, is, just in terms of my background, I've been with Republic for 2 years. My previous life for 25 years, I was a news journalist and an investigative journalist and an editor and the executive editor of the Indianapolis Star. So I do have a fairly lengthy history and background in terms of, neutral writing and reporting. So I feel confident that I could do that, but I would only do so if the other subcommittee members were comfortable with it, given my existing position now. And obviously, they would be, in that circumstance, my de facto editors, and would be, certainly obliged and welcome to push back on anything that was in there. But just in terms of, being able to take a neutral voice, that's what I went to college for. That's what I did for 25 years. So I could
Marge, to catch you up, is that it seems like the next task is to take those three core documents, Daniel, Nancy, Joel, and mush them into one document as the starting point. So we don't have to go back and forth between three documents. We're looking at one omnibus document that includes everything the three of them wrote in that order. And Ginger is willing to do that, given her background, and give us a draft, but she's not taking on this task for herself. This is a subcommittee would approve, edit, disapprove of any document, and then decide. And we talked about that. It does seem the public is the primary audience, and then follow up. It would be people that are not public in the general sense of the term, but say we had a new planning commission members, new SWAC members, new people to the county, whatever the case may be, that are coming in and are just learning about this, that it is a place for them to start. And we might look at the work that's been done and decide that we don't need so much detail from the beginning, but get increasingly more detailed in the history as we get closer to modern times. But no decision is made because we need to start with seeing what we have now. Reactions, thoughts, suggestions for improvement. Marge.
Marge, you're on mute.
I'm of two minds about that, which is I appreciate any help that we could get. But I honestly question like the optics of asking Ginger to do this. I think if we were to I think it's a good suggestion to have a neutral person come in to mesh these things together, and someone who is skilled at doing that kind of thing. But I think maybe what we should try to do is find someone even outside of our group who has those skills, who could do it, because I just don't know if it's a good idea for anybody. You know, to have the Ginger be the kind of the primary architect of the product.
No, that optics piece is very important, and Ginger, you know, is well aware of that. I was simply suggesting the initial mechanical merge. There's no editorial anything in it. It's taking these three documents and not cutting anything from them, just making one complete document. Then all of us would work on it.
Okay, so that's a clerical effort.
Yeah. It's the initial effort just to get everything on one document versus 3 or 4.
Now that's not what I heard. Is that your understanding, Ginger?
Yes and no. I think I was more thinking like you that somebody was going to need to take what was on these 3 documents and do a first pass at distilling it down into something a little bit smaller and more manageable, as opposed to like, you know, hey, we're just going to basically take 3 documents and put them into one big one. You know, and the reason I volunteered, but then said I would only do it if the committee was comfortable, is because I am well aware of the optics. I mean, the only thing that I can offer is that, you know, my entire career was based in journalism prior to going to Republic, and as a trained and productive news journalist for 2 decades, you know, I do have, and as an editor for other reporters and investigative reporters, I do have experience, you know, kind of culling and keeping in both sides, but it really depends on your, like I said, your comfort level. I totally understand that.
The thing is, that experience is diametrically opposed to your current job, your current position, which is to do public relations for Republic Services, right? I mean, so you're you're gonna have to be like you know, Jesus Christ of the garbage dump.
I look at it more as turning off my current role and turning on what I did for so long. But again, like I'm not going to say it needs to be me, and you know, I'm happy to be helpful and do it. But if there is a discomfort level because of what my current role is, I completely 100% understand that. My initial thought process going into this is I would have 4 editors looking at me who would be, you know, the checks and balances, who would be like, hey, you know, you may not think this is important, but we think, you know, like the community really would want this aspect in, because it's a really key component of what, you know, we see as part of the whole parcel and package.
Well, could we have a little bit of discussion about, well, first of all, I feel like I'm really not, I'm certainly not as skilled as you are as a former reporter and being schooled in, you know, these tasks of putting together disparate pieces of information into a single. However, I'm just thinking that I mean, isn't it worth it to hire somebody to do something like this? Isn't it worth it to for the committee to do that, to find somebody at the from the university, or you know, a freelance editor to do that?
So,
Totally over the
Yeah.
fan on that.
I mean, I would have to run it by the county, and I'm happy to do so, Marge. You know, I guess I'm concerned a little bit that we might be getting ahead of ourselves, because I do think the first task is clerical and formatting, to not cut a thing, make no editorial judgments whatsoever, just put in Joel's stuff. Because what they both Nancy and Joel, what they did was they looked at Daniel's piece and they said, insert this paragraph here, insert that paragraph there, that sort of thing. There would be no editorial work, and then let us look at it and see, because I think once we see everything in one place, then we can have some good discussions about, all right, where do we need detail, more detail? When do we need less detail, just generally on the document? And then it would be ripe for someone to take a look at that work. I don't know if the group would trust Millie, my assistant, to take the work and do the you know, the next piece after. Hell, frankly, she could do the first piece, the clerical piece, you know, to get us started. But ultimately, I just really want to emphasize, nothing's leaving this subcommittee unless we get a consensus from everybody on the call that this is the document we want the full work group to look at.
Can we do a little bit of discussion about how long we think this document should be? Because some of the detail in the county product is just stultifying. And I think if we just took out that those tables, that would be a huge step in the right direction immediately. That'd be a big win in terms of you know, kind of
Yeah, I mean,
because-
I think Marge, I think like consensus wise here on this call, like, I think you're right. Like, you have my full 100% support. Like, we've got to get this down to a manageable length, and, you know, 300 pages isn't manageable. Frankly, I don't know that the 30 pages is manageable.
right.
And I think, you know, Mary really, I think you had fallen off the call or it had some connectivity issues, but I think, you know, consensus wise, like, I think Mary's right. We got to start at the present and work our way back, because you have a tendency, as anybody knows, any story, any magazine article, you start from the top, and if it doesn't keep your interest, you lose people the further you go on. So we want the most relevant stuff that we all agree as a subcommittee to be at the beginning. And then we kind of, you know, we sort of back tell that story and say, okay, if you want, you know, more of historical context, you go into here. But it's like, we've got to get that, we've got to come up with something that is relevant to everybody and the public, and speak from the present and work our way back in something that's probably less than like 5 pages to start with the present, you know, to kind of keep in mind what the audience is going to sit through. And that doesn't mean only have the whole thing is 5 pages, but it means like whatever we think that those immediate points are that we need to make, you know, as a group, that's what we emphasize first, and then start distilling down backwards from there. But we have to get everything in one place so we can see it, is
So
what I'm
right-
understanding Sam saying.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would
right.
agree with that. Yeah.
Right now, it looks like it's 24 pages, and a lot of the pages,
a lot of the pages are
The
that
Gazette
table.
Times.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. And old stuff. The thing is that there are many recent articles available from the Gazette Times that are very informative, but are not in this table at all. So it's just an odd collection of trivia.
Well, Marge, would it make sense for one of us, whether it's you or Mary or whomever, or Louisa, or it could be me, I don't really care who it is. Would it make sense for one of us, like if Sam's gonna have, let's just say, for example, Sam has Millie on his staff do the clerical work, so that's a neutral party bringing everything together. Would it make sense for whenever that document is ready, one of us to provide whatever relevant, news articles, for example, that we think are missing, especially those from the most recent time standpoint, so that we're not working from a document that's incomplete to begin with?
Well, okay, I'm not sure that the best source of material is the Gazette Times anyway. I think that the way that happened is that, somebody thought history, where will we find history? We can find it in the newspaper, and, started to collect articles. But actually, I thought that the narrative description of history in the county document was pretty reasonable, far more informative than that
That
table
grid.
of clippings. Yeah.
Well, let's do this so we can move on to the other topics. I'll have Millie mush these together from a simply clerical perspective, so we have one document. Send it out to you so you can see it all in one place. There'll be no editorial, no edits at all, other than just simply merging them so you can see it all in one place. And then we'll bring this up at the next conversation. Is that okay, Marge, or no?
Well, I'm just not sure that that's going to make any difference, because we can look at the three documents, or we can look at it as a single document. I think where it starts to make a difference is when you interweave the aspects on this particular issue. You have what the county said, what Joel said, what Nancy said, and then we can look at that for a topic. But I mean, does anybody else think that it would make it be any different to have a large document?
I think that it might, because I think that we could all separately, like before the next meeting or whatever, we could all make comments on the document or about the document or something like that.
Oh, that's true.
And then we could all Sam could share the screen or whatever, and we could discuss those comments. So it might not make a difference, like content wise, to have it all together, but I think that it would organization wise, so that we can kind of all see each other's comments and then we can go from there as far as like cutting things down or adding things or whatever, like something like that. So we're kind of all on the same page to start out with. I think that could definitely be useful.
So in the other subcommittees, in fact, we did a little of this in the beginning of this process, where there was a document sent out, everyone commented, and then Millie put them all together. So you could have, I'm making this up, paragraph 6. Here's the original text of 6, and then here's Mary's comment on 6. Here's Marge's comment on 6. Here's Ginger's comment on 6, and then, like you say, I would then at the next meeting say, all right, looks like we have 3 different views on paragraph 6. What do you want to do with it? And in, out, edit down, add to, subtract from, and then we just got to start somewhere. I'm hearing that no one's a fan of the tables that cites, and I'm making this up, 10 pages of Gazette articles that said, county has meeting on funding incinerator. I mean, I'm not sure.
You're outstanding at reading the room, Sam, really.
Thank you. That's, yes. And that's only because
Do
I'm
they
not
train you to do
dead.
that when you're a facilitator?
It's only because I'm not dead yet that I was able to read the room. So let's do that. Let's move on to, again, this is just our kickoff meeting. The next piece is the how we're going to notify the public for the next, when the next CUP application comes down. So what I heard from the assessment, and I'm not saying this is right, I never, ground truth this, but what I heard in doing the assessment was Republic drops an application. The county works on it internally without giving notice to anyone in the broader public for X number of weeks or months. I do not know. And then it got dropped, and the 150-day clock was close to the end of that clock. So by the time it went through SWAC and then to the Planning Commission, there was virtually no time to understand it and get testimony ready. And it was kind of a general, what the hell's going on? This isn't working. And that led to, not surprisingly, suspicion and distrust and what have you. So that's why one of the themes has always been is, what do we want, for lack of a better term, the public engagement protocols and involvement to look like next time? The legal subcommittee is going to send us, meaning us here on this call, the legal requirements. And that's just the beginning. That's the base sort of thing, that, in other words, we can't extend the 150 days, without getting Republic to agree and who knows else to agree. But we can start putting in place things like, and I'm again making it up, within 48 hours of Republic filing the CUP application, the county will send out a press release that references a CUP page that posts the application and the documents, and that the email communications back and forth, or the progress, or what have you, gets posted within 24 hours of each major event. Again, making stuff up. And that, here is the email address for public comment that you can go. Here is going to be, is there going to be well, let me back up so I don't forget. Even before you file the CUP, there can be apparently a meeting between Republic and the county to work the issues in a pre-application process. Maybe things start then, but all of those steps we need to think through and make a recommendation to the full work group, to make a recommendation to the commissioners to say, let's put in place now and have the infrastructure up and running, so that once whatever the initial instigating event happens, we have a plug and play system to notify folks and get involvement. That's what this second item is about. Questions, comments, suggestions? Ginger.
So one comment and then, well, one question, then one comment. I guess my question is, when we are approaching this aspect of the charge, it seems like it would be short-sighted for us to assume that whatever we come up with would only apply to any CUP application that Republic Services might file in the future. So do we need to be cognizant that if we are changing the public notification process or how the county conducts business, that this would also be kicking in for a developer that wants to build an apartment complex, for example, or a company that wants to come in and change the zoning on a parcel of property somewhere in the greater vicinity of Benton County, because it seems like it would be problematic although I'm not a lawyer and I don't really know how all this county government stuff works, if we are setting out specifications that only apply in one particular scenario. So maybe you can enlighten us with like what your discussions with the county have been. So that's my question. One, is this just for this specific instance, or is this a broader change we're talking about as to how the county notifies residents of things that are important in their jurisdiction? And then two, personally, I would be more comfortable deferring to the other subcommittee members, being Marge, Mary, and Louisa, on what they would like to see the county do from a notification process, because they're the ones that live there, right? Like, when Republic does something, I'm not going to get the notification because I'm not a Benton County resident. When some other company does something, I'm not going to get the notification because I'm not a Benton County resident. So I'm hoping that the other three subcommittee members can really take the lead on that aspect, because they're the ones that are going to be setting the tone for, you know, months and years to come, if that makes sense. So those are my two comments.
So let me tell you preliminarily, I'll answer that, and you're up, Marge, next. In discussing this with the legal subcommittee very briefly on Tuesday afternoon, and when we looked at Jeff Kleinman's letter that he sent out Tuesday evening, maybe it was, I can't remember, but I got it to you in the last couple of days. That issue is front and center. I think the Board of Commissioners is primarily focused on Coffin Butte for this work group, but they recognize that their development code and their procedures probably need to be updated for all CUP kinds of notifications. Ultimately, I suspect that the work group is going to make whatever recommendations that are primarily focused on Coffin Butte. It may require that the county go into it and amend its development code and say things like, there are three kinds of CUP applications, and I'm totally making things up. Things that are under an acre and cost, less than $1 million. Here is the process. Things that are over an acre and cost more than $1 million. In other words, and triage it and cut it out. They can make that decision to do it. Whether or not it can be implemented, all we can do is make a recommendation. And then the board can decide it's one size fits all, and we're going to notice it for everything, or they could say small, medium, and large CUPs based on impact could have different procedures. So I know that doesn't answer your question directly, but the short answer is it can be done. It may require an amendment to the development code, well beyond my wheelhouse and expertise, but all we can do is make a recommendation. Marge?
Well, my general recommendation is that as a resident of Benton County, I would like to have this be a public process, and as it should be, I think it's almost legally required to be a public process, but it hasn't been in terms of letting people know. And part of it you can say is, well, how do we do that in an age when a newspaper only serves a sliver of the community, where it used to serve almost 100%. I think the way the work group has been advertised in the Benton County, the news releases that they send out, and the way that they and I think you have to sign up to get the news releases, but I think that's been pretty effective. And I think CUPs of a certain size, and it might make a difference too. Like this CUP affects the general public, where there are some that, you know, affect a small neighborhood or something. I mean, they could be classified in terms of what they affect as well. So there's a number of ways that you could do that. But I just don't think you can publicize something like this too much. You know, I just think any way in which you can find a way to communicate with the residents of Benton County, you ought to do it, because they're a really engaged group of people. And you know, this is something that they want from their elected officials. So
I'm just making some notes.
So, you know, I think like on the Board of Commissioners website, I mean, maybe there would be a CUP webpage, you know, like
Right.
so that people who are aficionados of CUPs can, you know, keep watch. Just anything that you can do to make the process more seen, more
Visible
You're
and
another
accessible.
resident. Accessible, yeah.
Yeah, I would just say to be careful to make it accessible to not just people that are really like, you know, aficionados, as you said, but also people, just the general public in general.
Oh yeah.
Like, just to make sure to span all demographics. And I would just wonder like what the best vehicle for that would be. Like how, like, 'cause I don't think a newspaper, not a lot of people read that, especially in the younger demographics. So I think I think the real challenge here is just figuring out a good vehicle that would be able to reach everyone, or at least as obviously as much as we possibly can. I'd be wondering what your thoughts were as to be like, what would that vehicle be? Like, would it be a website, or would it be, like, you know, what would that be?
I think
See-
it's multi-channel. I think it has to be multi-channel in this
Yeah.
day and
There
age.
is, yeah.
It's not one medium. It's got to be, you know, from Twitter to email to press release to, you know, hot air balloon. I mean, you know, whatever, multi-channel.
And the newspaper, you know,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
you can't
sure.
forget the newspaper,
No.
but across the board, just
Mhm.
anywhere that a public, that a citizen could, or resident could, you know, get this information. Radio stations. Some people listen to the local news.
Right. So related to that is the community education plan. So you know, I think the next step for this CUP sort of protocol, for lack of a better term, which may apply to other CUPs, is let's get the legal subcommittees. Here are the legal requirements and timeline. They should have that to us early next week, where we can see that. And then, you know, we have some sort of parameters, and then we can graft on to those things what your recommendations are, and go forward. And then we can have a more robust multi-channel way of doing it. Yes, March.
Yeah, just one point, which is that Benton County Public Relations Department, or the person who is responsible for this. I mean, maybe that person could join us for a meeting and explain how Benton County does use a multi-channel approach to communicating with its citizens, and what more it could do.
Right, and Genevieve, I think is how it's pronounced, is going to be joining us as part of this subcommittee as the resource person, because, you know, she can probably tell us in a nanosecond, here are the 5 things we always do, here are the 5 channels we always do, so we have a base condition upon which to comment. So then, oh yeah, Marge.
Just a question. So the CUP process before was not information about it was not distributed in the way that Benton County normally distributes information. Is that fair to say? Or
I
no?
don't
We
know.
don't know.
I only heard the complaints that people felt like the county
Right,
sat
right.
on it until it was too late.
Yes.
And then there was a very condensed period of time to do anything about it. That's literally as far as I took it during the assessment, other than to say, well, we can't repeat history. We got to do something more robust and transparent next time. The details of that are for you all to make a recommendation about. So then we'll end with the executive summary piece because that's the thing that's further off on our work plan. But we talked about a community education plan, and one of the attachments to the email, again, I appreciate I got it too late, for which I'm apologetic, were all your open house notes. So you guys had the longest open house notes of any of the other subcommittees. You were the best breakout station. That goes without saying, but bears repeating.
And
So
most impromptu one, I would like to point out, no preparation.
yeah. So all that stuff is there as one of the handouts, so you can see all the good ideas that were generated from folks as they came through your particular station. But the question becomes, between I'm going to say like end of January and the end of this process, what additional community education / outreach / frequently, what's that called? FAQ, frequently asked question documents, should we be generating and sending to that multi-channel approach to let people know, hey, we're coming to the end. We're in the last 2 or 3 months of the process. Here's what's going on, and so that's the next piece that this committee could help us with. Thoughts, ideas, suggestions.
I'm only not speaking because I had to generate a whole bunch of fact sheets and FAQs and things and update the Republic Services website at the beginning of this process. So like from my perspective as a company representative, we have a significant volume of information. I recognize that as a subcommittee member and a work group member, that information might not be satisfactory to the other individuals on the work group and the subcommittee. So, I mean, I could throw out suggestions all day long, but I don't feel like it's appropriate for me to be like, well, hey, I can give you fact sheets and I can give you FAQs for some of, for the same hesitations that Marge had earlier when we were talking about merging the documents. So I sort of feel like that's something I need to step back from a little bit in this particular scenario. But I'm open to however the committee wants to handle it.
Let me be more specific. This community education campaign will have virtually nothing to do with the merits of any expansion request. It will be notifying the neighborhoods and the community at large as to Benton County Talks Trash is coming to an end. And here is our report. And here is, where to look for when Republic files its application and that sort of thing. It's not why the landfill needs to be expanded or not expanded. It's not the positional pieces. It's simply, we want you to be aware of this process is going on. I mean, frankly, the open house, I thought was very helpful, but it didn't get published as quickly and robustly and widely as possible. And I think more people in the community need to know about it, about that. Here's what's going on with BCTT. Here's when their report's coming out. Here's what here's what it's going to talk about. Here's not what it's going to talk about. And beware of, here's going to be, if there is a CUP, here's the process that we're going to use to process it.
I mean, my personal immediate reaction is the broadest audience is for the county to send a direct mailer. They have to have, I mean, they have people's addresses, whether it's through, property ownership or utility bill, anybody who lives in the county presumably has some sort of
Utility bill.
yeah, like water bill or trash bill or, sewer
Exactly,
bill,
the
something
water
like
bill.
that. And so I would think that the county could use that
stuffer, yeah.
database to reach the greatest number of people. And it would certainly seem like the county already has a system in place to know that utility bills go out on, whatever day it is. Let's say it's the 10th of the month. So if they know that the utility bills are going out, I'll just throw out dates like June 10th, for example, then they wouldn't schedule any kind of public hearing or anything before, at least July 1st, so that people would have time to receive those utility bills and have 2 or 3 weeks notice that something was coming up. I think
that's a really good suggestion.
My personal feeling is if you give people any less than 10 days notice, you're not doing your job, your due diligence as a public official and giving them adequate time to prepare for something. I think I've seen it done, I think legally, yeah, it's got to be something like, 48 hours or whatever it has to be with a public notice. I think that's very unfair to the general public. I think I know what my life is like, and trying to all of a sudden rearrange my schedule to get interested, to get to somewhere that I'm interested in on 48 hours notice when I might have, kids activities, or I might have work commitments or something else going on. I really feel like whatever the county does, they have to give people minimum 10 to 14 days to be fair, to make the greatest effort to ensure public participation in the process.
Right. Well, see, that's another issue, is we don't even know what public participation in the process means. In that, under the statutes, it goes to the county and they do what they do, and then it gets sent out and it goes through SWAC/DSAC. Then the planning commission has a hearing, and the mere thought of a hearing, this is my personal nonsense. My ex-wife, with whom I'm very close, was City of Portland's land use lawyer for 100 years. And, these hearings are just that. Everyone comes and testifies, and it's really adversarial in some ways. There's no cross-examination or looking at each other. Just a bunch of information gets out. We could even be creative if you thought it was in the best interest of the community to say, well, let's have not a hearing before the real hearing, but let's have this gigantic forum where people pro and con and neutral come in an organized way and educate the general public before you even get into the please raise your right hand, you solemnly swear to tell the truth stuff that by nature will be adversarial. There's no education beforehand. And I don't know if that is a problem looking for a solution or a real problem that needs a solution.
The other thing I've seen work fairly successfully at the federal and the state level is, because not everybody can make it on a specific night, right? Is if you send out a mailer or do some sort of public notice. So let's say in this scenario, it's a mailer, then that triggers a 30-day public comment period. I see this all the time at the state level, like at the state
Right.
environmental agency level. And what is beneficial about that is that anybody who wants to weigh in, who wants to answer a question, who wants to make their voice heard, has on their own time within that 30-day period, the ability to send in a comment via email or via phone or snail mail or however they want to do it. They can tweet something in, DM on Twitter, whatever they want to do. But then you cut it off, 5 days or whatever it is before the, whether it's the SWAC meeting or the Planning Commission meeting or the Board of Commissioners meeting or whatever, so that those individuals who are in the position to be making decisions on behalf of the county have time to take that information, digest it, ask questions, and make that part of their public hearing process. Because a lot of times what I see is like a bunch of people come up and they wait 3 hours to speak at a public hearing, and they get 90 seconds to get their thoughts out, and then the BOC or whoever the governmental agency is, basically is digesting and processing that in the moment. And I don't think that's really an effective way to have discourse with the public.
Mary, thoughts?
I would agree with the kind of giving people a lot of time and kind of giving people a range of time to give public comment, because I don't think that it's accessible for, especially if we're talking about reaching all demographics, it's not accessible for everyone to go on a certain night or something like that. And it can also be discouraging just to have, to wait in line for so long and to only have 90 seconds or something like that. So I think being able to have like a range and have it really make it really easy for people to make public comment will make more people make comments, which I think is what we want. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I agree with that too. I think it's really important to give them some options as to how to make those comments, so that in that missive that you're sending out, you say, okay, this is the email address, this is a phone number, this is all these different ways that you can communicate and ask questions, or you can make comments.
Okay. Final topic, just to get introducing it, is the executive summary. So here is the evolution of this process. We've got 4, in addition to you, there's 4 other subcommittees, as you are aware. Each subcommittee is going to probably have a document that they think is ready for full work group review. That document will come with a, again, just making this up for context, a 5 to 10 page report and an appendix, which will have the deep dive details and recommendations that they are going to make. My staff and I will take those 4 reports, and with you there'll be 5, put them into the body of the report. And then there needs to be a pretty in-depth, this thing is probably going to be several hundred pages when it's done. No one's going to read several hundred pages. So if we have, 5 to 20 pages max per subcommittee as the body of the report, we need to roll that up succinctly and fairly and in a balanced fashion into an executive summary, which frankly may be all that a lot of people, all that most people are going to read. It'll only be the people that are very, very interested that will then follow the hyperlink in the executive summary to the specific sections that are going on. The report will also include one or two pages per work group meeting. A summary of what happened in each work group meeting with links to the documents. It'll have the usual things like, here was the charter, here was the charge, here were the members, the usual mechanical stuff. But the body of the report itself, I can see being around 100 pages with a big, huge appendix. The executive summary is key. I'm proposing that I will take the first shot at creating the executive summary from each of the subcommittees' report. Then it goes to you, this subcommittee, and basically you add, subtract, edit, check the tone, check for impartiality, what have you. And then that vetted executive summary goes to the full board, probably at the end of February, first part of
The
March.
full work group.
The full work group, they see, then they'll have the whole report. So the only thing that won't have been have work group members on it and members of the public on it before then is our executive summary group, because that can only be done once they get their reports done. So this is something that's going to happen in middle of February to middle of March, where this group has got to make sure that I've nailed objectively the executive summary. And then the whole work group will obviously be able to weigh in and say, you missed the mark, or yes, with some edits, what have you. So would you all be willing to do that? So I'll start with the reports from the 4 subcommittees, which you all have. All of you will have it. But then I will take that and create an executive summary that's going to be highly focused on the recommendations from the CUP, from the SMMP, from the legal, from the what have you, so that the reader can figure out overall, here's what the work group is recommending. And then there'll be a section of, here's where we got a consensus, and here are the topics we didn't get a consensus. And then every member of the work group will be able to put in their own personal report, unedited by anyone, that says, so Marge's report can say, I agree with everything in section 1 and 2. On section 3, I agree with these things, but I don't agree with the following 5 things, and here's why.
Is that every work group member?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So that while there'll be this massive voting 1, 2, or 3 based on each section, I want every work group member to be able to have a direct, unedited voice to the board on their views. And then in the executive summary, the final version of the executive summary, those parts where we say, here were the areas of, especially where the areas of disagreement are, then we'd have a table that said, Marge, Mary, and Ginger all disagreed on recommendation 17. And here's the hyperlink to in their own words, why they disagreed. Next issue 18, we had 5 people vote in the minority, or voted a 3, and here's where they are. So I need fidelity, tone, help from you all on that piece of work. Does that make sense or nonsense? Questions for clarifications, questions, suggestions for improvement of that general process?
I think my only question is the rest of the work group going to be comfortable with that approach?
Well, I'm going to ask them. The next, I don't know if I'll be able to pull this off for December 15th or not. It depends on the substantive work. I want the December 15th meeting to primarily be not just 15 minutes per subcommittee, but maybe a half hour, 45 minutes for each subcommittee to get into the actual detail and take the then existing pulse of the work group on the substantive work, so that they then can hear that input and refine their work product. And if we have time, I will lay out this, what I just said to you, along with Joel asked at the last meeting, how we're going to do the voting. I would present a draft of that going forward. But it's generally what I've done in the past, which doesn't mean we have to do it here, is I would say, all right, here's the CUP report. Here's what the subcommittee, here's how they voted 1, 2, or 3 on the subcommittee report. All right, work group CUP report. You vote 1 if you love it just as it is, and you don't, and you can fully support it. You vote 2 if you have, you can live with it, but have some, just if you will, friendly amendments to it. And you vote 3 if there's provisions in it that you just cannot accept. And then you tell us what those provisions are and why. And that's how we would vote on it piecemeal by the major sections. Because I don't envision, because we're just not going to have time going through a 100-page report and 400 pages of appendix saying, all right, sentence, page 52, paragraph 3, sentence 2, all in favor, 1, 2, or 3. We'll never, ever be able to do that. So my hope is the heavy lifting happens in the subcommittees and people can say, yeah, I support the minority report. I would prefer the minority report in the CUP subcommittees thing than I would the majority report. If we're not at a consensus.
I don't have a better suggestion right now.
Yeah, but think about it. We don't have to resolve it, but
But
that's
I do have a couple of questions.
fire.
Are we going to have a web page for this subcommittee the way all the other subcommittees?
I'm going to talk to Daniel tomorrow to set that up.
Okay.
So, and same
then
with the
I'll-
meeting minutes, same with the meeting notices that we're meeting, which is the last thing we have to do. We're going to meet every Thursday at X o'clock or Y o'clock or whatever day. All that will be just like all the other subcommittee pages.
Okay, and a link to this session will be published.
Yeah, I'm recording it, so that'll be uploaded just like the others. The agenda that just snuck up on me, frankly. But all that I'm going to be working on over the weekend, and I'm hoping by Monday or Tuesday. This is the 5th subcommittee page that has its own page.
Yeah, because I want to point out that given the executive summary being in this work group, there's going to be a lot of interest in what happens in these meetings. And so we really want to be able to put that link out there as soon as possible so people can start to get on the page of what we're doing here.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. And I think, frankly, the executive summary is largely starting with the summaries that each subcommittee will do, putting them into one document. So we're not recreating the wheel here. We're looking to the CUP committee, and they're going to have an introduction to their work, the body of their work, and then they're going to, I'm making this up, there are 10 recommendations to the board. And those are the major deliverables. But going through and saying in 1984, the CUP condition 13 said X, do you agree with that? I don't think we're going to be able to get to that level of refinement. So it's primarily getting people their level of agreement, neutrality, or disagreement with the recommendations that will be coming from each subcommittee. So unless there's anything else, we should move to the when are we going to meet? And my only hope is that we don't meet on Mondays and Tuesdays, because I already have 2 subcommittee meetings each of those days. Beyond that, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, as far as I'm concerned, Saturdays are open for me too. I'm not suggesting that you take your Saturdays to do this, but anything other than Monday and Tuesday is fine as wine.
Yeah, Thursday evenings, 2 weeks out of the month, I have meetings.
From what time to
Pre-existing,
what time?
From like 5:30 to 7:30.
Okay, so we can't do that. And Mary, you, I forgot your email. When's your best availability?
Oh yeah, so for Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, I can do anything after 4, and for Wednesday and Friday, I can do anything after 3.
So Wednesday after 3, can't do Monday and Tuesday because of my schedule. And Thursday it's after 4, you said?
Yeah,
And then what did you say about Friday?
Friday's after 3 too.
Okay. Ginger, Marge, which of those works best for you? Wednesday? I mean, I could just, you mean after 3, or is at 3 okay? Or do we need to do like 3:15 or 3:30 for you to get to where
I
you
could
need to
probably do
be?
either, but 3:15 would probably work better.
Okay, let's just do that. And 4:15 as well.
Yeah.
So really we have Wednesday at 3:15 for an hour and a half, Thursday at 4:15 for an hour and a half, or Friday at 3:15.
Friday would
Look,
suit me best.
I couldn't hear you, March.
Friday would suit me best.
Yeah, because you have your Thursday meetings.
Yeah, and I have a Wednesday meeting too. Not nearly as often, but
Mhm. Ginger, you got the kids, so
Yeah, so I mean, it's really going to depend on the week. So this week is an off week. I don't have kids. I have kids every other week. So I can do Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday on any of the weeks that I don't have kids. The weeks that I do, I'm going to have to pop in and out because I'm basically I help them with their homework, and then I'm an Uber for them as they go to their, gymnastics, baseball, whatever practices. So on those on weeks where I have the kids, I'll just have to kind of pop in and out of the conversation a little bit.
okay. Well, let me check with Genevieve and Miss Shelby and see what works, and then so that sounds like the first priority is Friday. The second priority is Wednesday, and the third priority is Thursday. And see. So let me talk with Louisa and Genevieve and see, and then I'll send out a confirming email and make sure we're good to go. And then I'll send out the invites, the calendar invite thing. So we get that going, and I'll get everything up on the website early next week. And an agenda, post the recording for this meeting, post all those documents that I sent you in the email today on this subcommittee's webpage. And then we can get a specific work plan going and get it done. Anything else for the good of the order?
You're going to be briefing Louisa, right? So she's
Yeah,
caught up on this call. Okay.
I'll send her an email and say, when you feel better, give me a call. And bring her in, and the same with Genevieve. Genevieve, I'll bring her in, and then I'll have Millie start just doing the mush version, so we have that as well.
Do we have any, I don't think we do, but do we have any assignments, tasks, or homework out of this meeting?
I guess if what would be helpful is if you have time to scan those documents that I sent, and just know I'll get them all into one, but at least you can start thinking about, like, just to pick the example that I got complimented for my read of the room on, the text boxes with Gazette articles, unless it's something major, and then we'd probably turn it into a narrative. 2-sentence, 3-sentence narrative that said this date, this important thing happened. Not that they were meeting to discuss an incinerator. I mean, we need if they approved an incinerator, and funded it, maybe we put that in, but not an article that says they're going to talk about it.
But as narrative. Yeah, I
Yes,
think
yes.
if we could just drop those 12 pages, we'd be right on the right track.
Well, yeah, that cuts it in half almost by definition.
Yeah.
There. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking your evening. I hope you have a pleasant evening, and I'll be in touch soon. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Thanks. Have a good
Bye-bye.
night, everybody.
Thank you, bye.